Welcome, everyone, to the Insurance Perspectives podcast. This is part one of our series on mPowered IT. On today's show, we have Mike Stansbury.
Proud to be with you.
And John Mamon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Mike will receive a full introduction in part two, as is our tradition. But as a sneak peek, Mike is principal of Elite Insurance Solutions in Brentwood, Tennessee, with 25 years of experience in the insurance industry. I am looking forward to his contributions to this conversation. Our main focus today is on John Mamon, and he is CEO of mPowered IT. mPowered IT is one of HawkSoft's recommended solution partners for Windows hosting and other managed services. Under John, mPowered IT has established itself as one of the best managed service providers focused on small, medium businesses, which you might hear us refer to as SMBs throughout this conversation, in the southeastern US, but also serving a national audience. John himself has 26 years of experience in the information technology world, edging out Mike's insurance experience just by a hair. He's an author of a book that I keep meaning to grab called The Extra Scoop, Rediscover the Art of Great Customer Service, which was published in 2017 and is a explanation and exploration of how to approach customer service and how others can embrace a perspective and practice to stand out in a world where good customer service is expected, but how do you go that extra mile? It's one of those big reasons that HawkSoft and mPowered IT gravitated towards each other. We have very similar perspectives on how to treat customers, which we'll probably get into today. This is the part where I joke about how little the audience wants to hear from me, which I joke because I know it's true. And so to kick things off, John, I'd love to get from you a quick elevator pitch for the services or functions that mPowered IT could serve for an independent agent.
Sure. Thanks, Kenny. We are what is known as a managed services and cloud services provider. And essentially what that means is we become the outsourced IT department for small businesses and specifically independent agencies. We provide the service desk, we provide systems administration, network operations, very importantly, security operations, and then the fractional C-level or chief information officer. And then on the cloud side, we do everything from Microsoft 365 and Google licensing to voice over IP, web hosting, desktop as a service, and so forth. So we really try to be the end-to-end provider for an agency from an IT perspective.
Fantastic. Thank you. And that gives us a good foundation to dive into our partner question. So here on the Insurance Perspectives podcast, we always ask each partner the same 5 questions to help build a comparable set of answers any independent insurance professional can use to evaluate a provider for their business. We like to start things off by understanding the origin story of the partner's company. We find that the story and the background of why a business exists really helps customers identify and fit them into kind of their bigger picture of why they exist. And so, John, I would love to know, why does mPowered IT exist and why do you focus on independent agencies?
Great question. So I've been doing managed services for a long time, before it was even referred to as managed services, frankly. And there are a lot of folks that claim to be managed services providers, but I'm acutely aware that many of them don't deliver the great experience, right? And so we exist in order to provide that great experience, right? It's our number one core value to make sure every person we interact with has a great experience. Specifically on the independent agency side, this is my second company doing managed services. The first one, we were almost exclusively servicing the independent agent, a lot in Georgia, some in Tennessee and South Carolina. And we became, and I have a core group of people here who were with me at that organization as well. So it was natural when we launched mPowered in 2014 to get back to that core of helping independent agents. We do service a larger the larger SMB space, we have other types of organizations that we provide service to, but our core and greatest density in terms of type of customer is the independent agent. So since the early 2000s, we have been working with independent agents. So we've, really have a grasp of workflow, of the platforms that they use and the unique challenges that come their way as a result of their services and being an independent agent. So it's just a comfort zone, if you will.
Hmm.
We again understand the workflow, understand their mission, and they have the same service paradigm as us, right? It's, take care of the customer. And so you mentioned earlier, Kenny, during the introduction, how we've gravitated together, and we found that same thing happens to us with independent agents as well.
Yeah. I'm very curious. We've possibly talked about this in the past, but I would love to know um, what drew you into the IT world, because you have a long history in it, and you were kind of present there in the nascent days of um, technology becoming ubiquitous at a business. So, what's the background there?
Yeah, it was something that I just had a natural, just naturally gravitated to and had a talent for. When I was in high school, they had we had the first computer lab where I lived, and it was on IBM PC Juniors, which famously crashed and burned as a product line. But I was the guy that everybody brought their homework to for help doing coding, and we had actually had an Apple Mac lab as well, and they I just again had a natural inclination for it, so I went to college
Hmm.
for it and so forth. So that's like the standard pat answer. The other answer is Star Trek.
Gotcha.
I was a
Okay.
Star Trek geek when I was a kid, and the computers all fascinated me.
Yeah,
So I don't know. It's just something that I always had an interest in.
that's fantastic. Paul Hawkins wouldn't mind me sharing this because he is also a Trekkie. So if you
Oh,
ever
okay.
encounter him at a trade show, or when you encounter him again at a trade show, you should definitely spark up a conversation, because it's one of those things that I would not have guessed, knowing him and talking with him, but he absolutely loves Star Trek.
Yeah.
Um, so, um, you know, mPowered IT is not the only managed service provider in the world. There are
Mhm.
others out there. You probably overlap somewhat in functionality or services with those operations. And this is true for any, if we were comparing management system to management system, or CRM to CRM, there's always going to be that overlap. But then there's going to be about, it's that 80-20 rule, and that 20% that differentiates a business. If you could pick one aspect of mPowered IT that draws in and keeps customers, what would that be and why?
It's experiential, right?
Mm.
It's the extra scoop. To your point, there's lots of managed services providers. They generally all use one remote management platform or another. We all use the same CRM. And then there's whatever flavor of your endpoint security and whatever you make up your security stack with and so forth. So there is an awful lot of um, overlap, but it's really the experience, right? And it's why it's our number one core value. It's just creating the great experience for the customer. So we find that we have raving fans, and if we have a customer that maybe isn't a raving fan, there's some value misalignment, right? They don't value
Mm-hmm.
that extra scoop experience. It's something else that they value more. So it's our world is much more complicated than say an auto repair shop, but it's very similar in mindset in terms of where do you go back to, right, to get your car
Mm-hmm.
worked on. You go back to the place that treated you great, that you had a great experience, they set the appropriate expectations, and they delivered on those expectations or exceeded them, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why even the introduction to the book, The Extra Scoop, is all about the story of the ice cream vendor on the corner, right? Which one do you go back to and it's always the one that treats you well and gives you the extra
Hmm.
scoop, right? So it's that is really the distinction for empowered IT. And as a second item, I would say, just again, our familiarity with the independent agencies and
Hmm.
their work and their models.
Absolutely. Mike, are you a raving fan of mPowered IT? Which is a
Uh,
dangerous
Just,
question to ask on a podcast, but
yeah, just to let you know that the one thing I captured out of most of the conversation this morning is to make sure you heard me tell you I'm his number one raving fan. I speak very loudly
gotcha.
when it comes to Empowered, and for good reason. But yes.
Excellent. Um, and this will probably be another point to bring Mike into. So in our 5 question set, which admittedly was slightly more tailored towards HawkSoft's API partner group, but I think John, you have a particular expertise on this. Mike, you have a very strong advocacy in this space. So, John, I would love to know how Empowered IT approaches data ownership with regards to their customers, and then maybe we'll take a moment to kind of dive into that more holistically.
Hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, from our perspective, we don't own anybody's data. We help protect it. We help provide access to it, but um, the data is the agencies, right? And it's critical, right? That data set is what their whole agency is built on, right? So for us, it's a matter of for being uh, ultra protective on behalf of the agency, right?
Mm.
Part of my role in working with Mike is identifying areas of opportunity to improve security, let him know where there may be risks, and then helping to fill those gaps in order to protect that data.
And Mike, how has your experience been collaborating with John on the subject?
Oh, that's I've got a long-winded answer there, but to answer shortly and concisely, it's superior. So this is my chance to make sure that the folks listening in hear directly from me about reaching out and contacting Empowered. I've been doing this a long time. I have explored every avenue, and I feel as though I'm an expert in the field of technology and infrastructure with a production of independent insurance. We've been very successful in this measure, and we are so thankful for that. Hearing that background without being uh, self-touting, I couldn't do what I'm trying to accomplish with customer service and superior client experience without John's team, without the protection in the backside of that. And this comes from the person that started the agency at square one, and I'll touch on that a little bit more. But the moment we got to where we could try and bring in the third party services, and John is my CIO. John is at the levels that we're working at now. We are way deep in the safari of this. So
Hmm.
if you're early into this as a listener and you're thinking your way through, how could I even think about this? There are ways to ease into this where you don't have to go all in. You have to make it part of your budget, and you have to make it part of my CFO works this into our expense. We know this in a level where we're seeing our revenues get encroached on by multiple fronts. This is a have to when
Hmm.
you're going to stay in the game as it pertains to customer experience. So John and his team, um, and I've been together for 4 years, but I have touched every aspect locally, internationally, to achieve where I feel like we are. And John will be the first to tell you we're never stop
Hmm.
sharpening our pencil in here. We're working on things right this very second that are designed to help him pay it forward with other folks that reach in and call in, and we
Yeah.
get to be a part of that. And take great pride in paying it forward. So it's exciting to be a part of him and his team. Our communication, and to circle back, our communication is
Hmm.
superior.
That's fantastic. Um, as an agent, if people are tuning in and they're hearing this kind of conversation around, an IT team collaborating with an agency and ensuring that there is transparency and clarity in the range of data ownership, um, how can you convey to them why that's important?
It's really not very hard to do, and I have several analogies that I've used along the way. But um, I live in Nashville. We have a lot to do with intellectual property here in this town. We make a lot of music around here, and this is the same thing that applies here. Just in a simple way, we don't own the chords G, C, D, and E, or whatever music note that was out there. We don't own that. The clients have their data, and that's their data. But when we put that together into our own song, that does become our intellectual property. That does become our work. We do have the copyrights and the research on that, just like every other recording artist or any other person dealing with intellectual property. So when you deal in that kind of environment, which we do, it becomes mission critical to ensure it's safe, ensure that you've got we're using every reasonable test we can to test our system and make sure it's safe. But by the same point, we also want to treat it with a way that we can leverage that to make the experience better for the consumer, make it more readily accessible, make it easier. I get so tickled at the direct writing people out there that say our app has their policy in their pocket. We have multiple apps for multiple carriers in their pocket and have had for 10 years. This is nothing new here. So those are the areas where it's relevant to somebody tuning in to listen and to understand. And I want to stay just at an early entry point, knowing that there are deeper, more intellectual folks that are further down the line in this. But if you're young in time in the saddle with this kind of exploration, you need to find partners in here that will help you grow in your area. And John's firm is doing that for us and can do it for you as well.
Excellent, thank you. Now, try not to let those compliments impact your next answer, John, because this is the point in our podcast where we really try to embrace this concept of open, honest, transparent communication. And you have a wealth of experience working directly with independent agents. What is the hardest part of working with insurance agents?
I don't know if it's necessarily unique to independent agents, but one of the challenges certainly is getting the investment, and I don't mean necessarily just dollars, right? I mean investing the time and mind share to to the technology environment, right? So Mike and I do have regular conversations, but there's an agency to run, right? There's always something going on. There's a customer that needs attention, or there's somebody out in the field that needs support, or what have you, right? So to get somebody, an agency leader, to park for 45 minutes and have a security profile review, right, can be a challenge. And then of course, if you were to identify, hey, these are areas of risk that you need to be looking at, then from there it's almost always an investment, a monetary investment to close that gap, right? So it's usually not so much the latter, but more the former that is the challenge. But I would say, being able to get up out of the business long enough to really look at it from, a 60,000 degree view, or 6,000 foot view, excuse me, and understand where things are from a technology landscape, and certainly from a cybersecurity perspective. That is the very fact that many agencies do sell cyber insurance, and also have a requirement to have it in many cases, is helping close that gap down, because rates are affected by what is being done and what's not being done, and so forth. So That's helping close that gap some and making those conversations a little easier to have. But I would say that's probably the primary challenge.
Mike, do you think that John has that accurate?
Oh, I completely agree with that. It is it's very hard to pin us down, and quite honestly, um, I use the analogy with communication. Um, and every agent listening to me is going to understand exactly what I mean when I say if you have an underwriter or a person communicating to you and they say, I told you 3 times. From their perspective, they've told us 3 or 4 times or whatever the case may be. But from our seat, I want you to think of a giant football stadium with 75,000 people in there. They're in section 301 and they told me 3 times, but I'm in section 110. So while they did in fact tell me, there is a lot of noise going on in the environment that we live in that encroaches on receipt of information. And it happens in an underwriting scenario, it happens in a claim scenario, it happens in a client scenario, where we're trying to make sure we're receiving and that level to be disciplined enough is a shortcoming that is being exploited by less than meritorious people in our community.
Could not agree with you more. Part of the genesis of the Insurance Perspectives podcast was a desire to fight against that, to fight against.
That makes me very happy to be here.
Yeah. No, and I'm grateful for you bringing that up because I completely agree. I think that insurance, I mentioned it before the call. I mentioned that I've always held that insurance agents are the busiest people I know. And they also perform a vital service to our community we're in a hard market right now, so it's not as true as it has been in the past, but in a rather resilient industry. And
I
for
only
technology
work
companies,
half days.
yeah,
I do. They're half days. It's just 7 to 7.
yeah, I see what you're saying. And so oftentimes I feel like technology companies look at independent agents and they start to salivate, and it's like that is the most inappropriate way to look at a customer.
And they create
Because
diagrams to make that harder as opposed to easier.
Exactly.
It's just a shame.
This kind of gives us, I'm going to deviate slightly to the chagrin of our editor, because I think mPowered IT offers a service that many might not be familiar with, although the concept of a fractional C-level person is becoming more commonplace in small businesses. John and Mike, I'd love to get just a quick rundown on how mPowered offers that fractional CIO role, and maybe start with like what is a CIO and how could that benefit an agency?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the CIO stands for Chief Information Officer, and at your larger enterprises like Coca-Cola and Home Depot, that is generally the person that's on the C-level team that is responsible for the entire information technology environment. In recent years, that has started to become more delineated. There's also a chief technology officer in some cases, in many cases, and also now what is called a chief information security officer, whose role is, security of the information, right? But we at the size of customer we work with, we keep it simple as a fractional chief information officer. We bundle it into our program, so it's part of all of our services. If you're in our support program, that's what you get that comes with it. We're essentially, that role is providing a level of oversight and guidance when it comes to the technology environment for your agency. So that's what the role is all about. Also acts as an escalation point, as you might imagine. The chief information officer is sitting at the C-level, the service desk and the systems administration group and the network operations group, that all reports up through. And so that's the same here too. So I am the advocate for the agency within mPowered IT and the rest of the team. And if some services are not meeting expectations, or we need to alter certain delivery functions in order to better deliver a good experience, or a great experience in this case, my role is to help manufacture that and make it happen.
Excellent. Mike, anything you want to add on that, like your experience as having a fractional CIO now?
Yeah, just the level of expertise that comes in. From my perspective, you know, I am not Coca-Cola or Home Depot or any other carrier that every agent listening to this call is working with. Every single one of those agencies is going to understand every carrier they work with have a team of security personnel and technology people that they're interacting with. And the embracement of the integration between you two people for my operation is critical. It is what I am in the business of. I have told people long before I'm in the technology business, and I happen to be a distributor of products, but so is FedEx. If you don't think that FedEx doesn't have a technology side that rivals NASA, you're missing the bigger picture.
Totally.
And all they do is move freight. We're doing the same thing on our distribution model. We're very good at it. We have to understand that. But in the chairs that I sit in, and the folks listening to this conversation are going to sit in, they're going to understand really quickly the shared services of a CIO and why that could come into play. How do they do that? Can I afford it? The answer is yes, you can. You just have to, build your percent to budget and find the organization that you can work with. And again, to your point about HawkSoft's direct impact to that's the primary way you would want to get into that and lead into that, is to spend the time inside that shared services treatment as you can grow one step at a time. And you're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel like this is just so expensive. Why would I spend the money on all that kind of stuff? But it does have an ROI to it. It absolutely has an ROI to it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Kenny,
I appreciate that.
If I could point out too, so there are, a lot of managed service providers. You can just go to any managed services website, right? And a lot of them say that they do a VCIO or a virtual CIO as part of their delivery. And it just as a cautionary tale for the listeners, very often that role is not filled by somebody with business acumen or who has been in a C-level seat. Very often it is, given to the salesperson to be the VCIO, and
sure,
it's almost more of an account management function than it is a true guidance
gotcha.
function. And similarly, some do it with a salesperson, some do it with an engineer. That's somebody who's just like a technical lead or something like that, which again likely does not have the business acumen to truly help guide a business. So that's just a cautionary note for the listeners if they're looking for managed services or needing that level of guidance.
No, I really appreciate that, and I think we've all in the business world experienced the scope creep of title. It just kind of evolves over time, and I think it is good to this points out kind of an approach I like to advise agencies on is ask these questions when they say, and thank you, John, for pointing that out. When a service provider says you'll have a virtual CIO or a fractional CIO, ask them what that means. Ask them about the background to highlight that. I think that's really good advice. We like to stick the landing around here. We took that detour, which went into a very positive place. But the question before that, the hardest part about working with insurance agents, you can say that's like kind of the downswing and our upswing that we like to end on. John, I'd love to know, what is the best part of working with insurance agencies?
It is, we touched earlier on, it's a service industry, right? And they have customers to take care of and people to take care of, and enabling that mission is the best part for us. It's truly, helping them, number one, stay secure and keep their customers' information secure, but also enabling them to, I'm sure very much like HawkSoft, enabling them to take care of those customers in in an effective way, right? So if there's something going on in the technology environment and people can't do their jobs, they're not getting the service they need, right, from the agency. So our role in helping them is to keep everything running smoothly so that they can truly deliver for those customers. And so that that for me is the, you know, delivering that great experience is the best part about working with the agencies.
Fantastic. That is a perfect positive note to end part one on. John, thank you so much for sitting in the hot seat with us, and Mike for contributing along the way. Thank you to the listeners to today's podcast. Thank you for watching today's episode. Click the video description below to learn more about our guests and to view the latest podcast episode as well as other content from HawkSoft. We appreciate you watching and hope you join us next time on the Insurance Perspectives podcast. Thank you.